My 2D game creation library called Call2D is now in its first beta period. This is a 2D game creation library completely written in Odin. It has a focus on trying to not use too many weird dependencies, so that when you later ship your game, you can easily go in and just change the Odin code of the library without there being too many weird other libraries to go into. You can find the library on this GitHub URL up here. That's also in the description. And on there you can also find a bunch of examples in the examples folder here. Some of these are available as web versions also, some of these examples. For example, in the README you can see that there is a list here of these examples. So you could click, for example, the box 2D one and see this example where you have some cubes that you can push around, or you can click the minimal example, which is just this spinning texture and some stuff. And then there is stuff like multiple font support, stuff like that. It's all very similar to Raylib essentially, but written natively in Odin. Instead of relying on libraries like glfw to open windows, I have written like backends for that kind of stuff. So you have like a window interface for the Windows Win32 API, and I have multiple different render backends. So I have a D311, a GL, and a WebGL backend currently, and more will come as I develop the library. The thing I'm really trying to solve here is that you want to make your game in Odin, right? But then sometimes you figure out that something in the library you used, your 2D game creation library used, you didn't like how it worked. So you want to change that. And if that is in a C library, it means you need to have a C compiler go in, recompile, put in a library file somewhere, and then rerun your program. Since all Odin libs come as source code, you can just have your game and you have my library, and then when you don't like something in my library, you just go in and change the line directly in the source, and you just recompile your game, and it's all changed. This will make it easier to ship your game because you have more control. You just feel more in control over these things. And it's also easier to ship your game because I don't rely, my library in turn, I try to not rely on too many other libraries. So I, for example, I use the Win32 windowing system instead of using glfw. And I try to use the most native rendering API on a platform. That's why there's a D3D11, because that's what I started with from Windows, because it felt most natural in Windows. And then we have WebGL, of course, for the web, and the GL backend will probably mostly be used on Linux. The Linux support is not there yet. I'm still making the windowing support, but the GL stuff would work there. But you can also use the GL backend on Windows if you want to. So a nice thing about this library is that the web builds do not require mscripten. Instead, it uses Odin's native JS WASM target to compile your program as WebAssembly. And the way that works essentially is that, well, what you need to do that is just change the target string when you build. However, when you run a program like this, you have this box. This is the box 2D example running in a browser here. There are 3 files to this, right? So if we look inside the box 2D folder here, here is the web build. It looks like this. So this is the WASM file. This has your whole game inside it. This is the Odin JavaScript runtime, which comes as part of the Odin compiler. And here's a little index HTML file that essentially just runs your WASM file inside a canvas. So this file here is easy to make because it just falls out of the compiler when you use the JS WASM32 target. These two, this one I've made a template for, and this one it gets copied from the Odin compiler directory. So in order to automate that process a bit, the library also comes with this build web tool that you see here. And yeah, so the way you would do that is that if you open a command line here, for example, and you say Odin run build web, is a build web inside in turn is a little Odin program, and then you say example/box2d, then it does all that for you. It finds the Odin compiler. I can show you that again. We can just go in here and remove these 2 folders. it finds the Odin compiler and sets everything up. It makes this build folder where it puts a little Odin file. This is the file that actually compiles. It has some to make the entry of the JavaScript stuff work nicely, and then the output is in here where it puts these files, these three, and it does all that for you. And you can look at what this little program does. This build web program here is not a complicated program. It's just essentially just a little build script. It's a little build script written in Odin that compiles some Odin code itself and copies around some files. Nothing fancy. You could compile the WASM file yourself, but this just makes it a bit easier. So yeah, currently, I think we saw this here in the, what this library currently has is it does rendering of shapes, textures, and text with automatic batching. So you get like collapse draw calls when it can. It has some support for shaders and cameras, and it has a D4D11 OpenGL backend that works on Windows, and it has web support via WebGL, no unscripted needed. You can use mouse, keyboard, and gamepad. There is even this little, there's this little gamepad demo here. If I boot up my little gamepad here, for example, we see that it will pop up here. This works in the browser as well. What this first beta does not have is, but it will be implemented roughly in the order it is in this list. It does not have Linux support. I'm looking into that now. It doesn't have any kind of sound support because that's sort of an orthogonal feature to rendering, essentially. It's a completely separate thing. But I will look into that once I'm done with Linux stuff. Then something for cross-compiling shaders between different backends. What that means is that Direct3D11 might use HLSL, and OpenGL, you might want GLSL, and then there's some different bytecode formats to pass around also in some APIs, with some rendering APIs. All that stuff I haven't looked into too much yet, but I have a plan for it. And then there's no Mac support. On Mac I might want to use Metal because it's, again, the most native. I like using something that feels very like the most problem-free for that platform. But I could probably also use GL. We will see about that stuff. So the link to the GitHub page is in the description. You can also hop on my Discord server. There's a link in the description as well. And if you need any help or have any like concerns or questions, and yeah, please try it out. If you manage to make a little web game, hop onto my Discord server and please show a link, because I'd love to see if you manage to make something using it. And yeah, happy programming. I'll see you next time, and bye bye.